Hello and welcome to another episode of CollectaThoughts, the show where I collect my thoughts on video games. And today we'll be talking about Animation Throwdown, the quest for cards, which is a mobile game now also on PC. Actually, it's probably been on PC for a while, but I just kind of randomly saw it on the Epic Game Store and I thought, well, why not? But that turned out to be a really bad decision because this is a really big just cash grab of a game, which is very obvious from looking at it. And to be honest, I kind of expected so. But after my quite big enjoyment of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links, I decided I would give another card game a choice. And this is what this is. It's a card game, of course, it's called The Quest for Cards, based on the animation from Fox, I guess would be, with shows like Family Guy, American Dad, Bob's Burgers, Hank Hill, and even Futurama, even though there is no Simpsons to be found here. I guess maybe the license for that one is a bit too valuable or expensive. I'm not quite sure what the reason was. Maybe just Matt was like, okay, you can get Futurama, but you cannot get The Simpsons. I'm not sure. Regardless, the implementation of these franchises into this game is fairly basic. It's a card game, and so the cards are just screenshots from the show. For example, main character cards will just be them standing there vertically in the most boring and basic pose possible. And that's because the equip cards themselves are the ones that actually have some personality to them, like Peter Gaming, Condom Chris, or Lois Piano. And it's a picture of just the piano. As you can tell, it's a show that ensues hilarity, much like the show it's based on. Sarcasm aside, the design of the cards does feel very lazy, and because there are so many shows involved in here, and they just use screenshots from the shows themselves, it also adds this incongruity to the art style. That being said, this really is the least of this game's worries. It would have been nice to have a congruent art style, or maybe even beyond that, have this kind of mixed art style but have original art from the creators for the cards would be really cool. But there's really none of that, and the game looks really cheap. There's nothing much more to say there. It looks like one of those phone games that gets thrown out into the Play Store, so it makes money off people that recognize this property. But regardless, I pushed through it and I beat it, and that's why I'm doing a review today. And basically, I just want to talk a bit about the game and how its systems work, and a bit on how they kind of exist more to make money than actually create an enjoyable experience. For starters, I want to talk about progression. Throughout the story, each level will cost a certain amount of lives, and as you progress, the levels cost more and more lives. And one of the weird things about this game is actually that early on it's worst, because immediately levels will start costing something like 3 and your lives will be something like 10, only really allowing you to do about 3 matches each time you log in, depending on how long you wait. This may sound like a lot, but trust me, each game is about a minute long and this is really nothing. And this can also be seen in other aspects of the game, for example in the events which refill every 24 hours. And these have about 6 to 10 plays each, which you can do without using lives. Which you could say it balances out the campaign, which doesn't let you do much. Maybe the point is that you progress slowly through the campaign. But the problem I have with that is that I found the events to be quite repetitive. It is really just one battle that you do multiple times to gain points. Of course, you are incentivized to do this because there's rewards in it, especially better cards, which you'll definitely need for progressing through the story. You do not get the cards necessary through progressing through the story to actually be able to beat it, which, to be fair, is typical of this type of game. And they clearly want you to be a little bit under leveled, so to say, even though this is a card game. So, you're a little bit more inclined to spend some money on cards, which is fine. I mean, it's a free to play game. I expect this kind of things. the more we get into it, the more you understand how much I'm not a huge fan of the game. That's kind of the problem. Like I said, the events are repetitious, and one of the things helping with this is the autoplay. There's an autoplay feature that legitimately just calculates whether or not you win a match, and you can calculate how many matches you have in total. So you can actually complete an event, get all the wins, and not actually have played anything. And you can use this gameplay feature along the whole game, both in the story and these events, and also the rank system. It's not multiplayer, the whole game is single player, even though it's always online, but you are playing against other people's decks. And basically it is like any other ranking system where the higher you go, the harder decks you'll find. And of course you want to be higher because you'll get better rewards at those higher tiers. And once again, you can autoplay all of it, which is a feature that I'm very split on, because on one side I enjoy that I can just skip these bits and still get the rewards, which I guess isn't particularly a great thing. And on the other side, well, the game is just playing itself. I'm not playing the game, it's doing its thing. You can have auto deck on and auto play on. The game is basically just playing itself by itself, and you're just kind of clicking it to run. But for the sake of this review, this actually came in handy, because at one point I got quite tired of doing the events and even the rank system, but I needed cards to be able to beat the story, which was also getting quite hard as the game has quite a lot of difficulty spikes. And to understand that, we will finally now talk about the gameplay. As a card game, it is fairly basic. There are two types of cards. There are main character cards and there are equip cards. Both can be played on the field normally, and they have attack and life points, with the attack points being the damage that is done to the life points of the directly facing card, and if there is no directly facing card, to the life points of the player. The way this works is every turn you can summon a card, and as you summon cards, they will be added to the right of the previous card, unless one of the cards gets destroyed, and then you have to put in the slot that was destroyed. For example, if you have 3 cards and the middle card gets destroyed, your next summon will be in that middle spot. In the case of, for example, if those 3 cards, the first 2 were destroyed, then you put a card in the first place and then in the second one. And from this you can probably already see a really weak point from this card game, and that is the advantage from destroying a single card completely overthrows the game's balance, because the moment you lose a card, you suddenly have an open space that the enemy can just hit every turn for life points, as they have a +1 card advantage. The answer here is of course you destroying one of the enemy's cards as well, but given the low amount of life points your character has, especially the whole game, I never really got a character that had a lot of life points, even though I definitely saw some other characters with really high health bars. But of course, for that you have to level up past a certain level, and leveling characters gets exponentially hard after a certain level, which can be fixed by spending money. Regardless though, another thing adding to this problem is also the unbalance of power between cards. This is also leading to talk about the difficulty spikes in the story. And by the way, I'm saying story, that's my reflex. There's no story here. It's just a bunch of levels set in a row. But regardless, what I mean by the level spikes and the unbalance is that cards are divided by colored ranks, and generally speaking, the higher the rank, the more powerful the card is. And the jumps between stats on these cards can be quite big. The jump between rares and epic cards is massive, and even the jump from epic to legendary cards is pretty big. There's also a mythic level of rarity, but I definitely never got close to getting any of those cards. By the end of the game, my deck was purely epic and legendary cards, with me losing most duels where I only pulled epic cards. The thing mitigating this is of course being able to level up cards and then fusing them to create an even stronger card. This being of course cheaper and easier to do with lower rarity cards because you just have a lot more of them. Also important to mention here, I'm not gonna bother talking about all the different currencies that are in this game. As you know, it's a phone game, it's a free to play game. It's a card game, and you can level up cards and buy cards. You can guess there's a bunch of currencies that can all be acquired in different ways, but there's one big unifying one, which is money. Which, once again, it's fine, it's a free to play game, just kind of annoying that it's divided into so many currencies. Regardless, the other kind of problematic feature of this game, and it's a core one, is the ability to equip cards. Of course, there are the main character cards and there are the equip cards, and the way it works is while you can use both of them individually on the field without any drawbacks, as despite the name, equip cards will play out just like the regular cards on the field, but you can equip, or the other way around, you can add a main character to an equip card, making for some of the more powerful cards within that rarity level, which would be a really cool thing in the gameplay. But the reason it's not, it's because to unlock this you have to put the two cards in a fictional machine that fuses them together to create that card, basically giving you the ability to fuse them during gameplay. And this is really annoying. Even though it doesn't take away the cards from you, you can still play with them while they're being fused, but because you have to fuse them in general, and how long it takes to fuse them. Epic cards take 24 hours and legendary cards take 48, and you can do 2 at the same time. At least initially. You can eventually unlock 3, and if you spend money, 4, but I never even got to 3, so that's something to be aware of. And basically what that means is it might take you something like a month to be able to get your whole deck to its full potential, which is, and I'm just gonna say it, stupid. This is a really core feature of the gameplay. It really should not be behind a paywall like that or a time wall. They all should have just been unlocked from the beginning and have their stats be based on the cards you're fusing, so you don't lose that incentive to level up your cards. And leveling up your cards is expensive enough, you really don't need the extra thing. Finally, the last thing about the gameplay, and this is probably the best part, but also another show of how overpowered higher ranked cards can be, and it's the abilities of the card, things like recovering health, raising health, not taking damage, protecting a card next to it, boosting the card next to it. Things like that do quite add a little bit of strategy, especially as some of them force you to have some synergy by saying things like add plus attack to an American Dad card or something like that, making you want to actually put some thought into your deck building rather than just putting all the rarest cards, which is what I did because I never actually had any kind of consistency. I guess by the end of it, I had a Hank Hill and Bob's Burgers kind of deck. I don't know. It was whatever I had legendary, I just tried to match with that. Because of course, trying to actually get the cards you want is not very easy, especially if you waste a lot of the early opportunities you get to buy cards because you don't quite understand how the systems work. My advice is, do not fall for that thing that costs not quite a lot of gems, the main microtransaction currency, because I swear you're never gonna get the card that's actually worth anything. Just save that stuff up for the bundles that actually guarantee you good stuff. Not that I recommend you playing this game, as you're gonna get to know in a bit. Regardless though, once again, the special abilities are very bound to rankings, and higher rankings, like for example legendary, can have something like 3 different abilities with a number attached to them, which is the number of effect. Like for example, if you have a 2 next to a golden turd, that means that the cards adjacent to that one get +2 attack. Or for example, if you have a brick wall and it's a 4, that means that you take less 4 damage from incoming attacks to that card. Which again could be a good thing, but this game is just very poorly divided. It really feels like if you're playing with epic cards and you're playing with legendary cards, you're playing a different game or you're playing on a completely different level. And regardless of what the card's weakness or strengths are, generally speaking, a epic card is gonna lose against a legendary card. And that's a shame because if you do find a cool combo with the cards you have, it doesn't mean much if the adversary simply has a deck with higher rarity cards, diminishing a lot of the strategy and planning the game could have. And that's about it. It just feels like a game where these functions exist to make money rather than to make a game. And because of that, it can feel frustrating to play it as you don't feel bound by the quality of your deck or deck building skills, but more by the size of your wallet. We live in a society, yes. Anyways, the music sucked. That also I had to point out because the first thing I did when I put this game on was turn off the sound because it was really bad. And for all those reasons and more, I'm surprised that I ended up talking about this game for 16 minutes. I am giving Animation Throwdown, the quest for cards, a 2 out of 10. And I don't even particularly feel bad giving it that score because I don't think anyone cared. I don't think anyone making this game ever cared. It was someone's paycheck and it was Fox's, I'm guessing, money to, invest in some mobile game because mobile games are popular. Recommendations wise, I don't recommend it. That's as simple as it is. There are a lot better card games out there, and you're not really getting much out of the franchises in this one. There is very little writing, and when there is, it doesn't even sound like the characters from the show, so just be aware of that. And play something else. Maybe Duel Links. Duel Links is fine. I like Duel Links. That one is very generous, surprisingly, for a Konami game. I know, right? Anyways, I hope that you enjoyed watching. And if so, please consider subscribing, liking, and commenting all the things you can do for free here on YouTube. And regardless of that, I hope you're having a good day. And goodbye.